Hello and welcome to an episode of Historically Marked. I am Jason in Prairie du Rocher, Illinois, and this town is celebrating its 300th birthday this year. Yes, 300. That means it's been around since before the United States in Illinois. And so not many towns here in the United States can say that they've been around for 300 years. Some communities during that time were lucky to stay around for 3 years. But yes, lots of different things happen in Prairie du Rocher as well as the surrounding area. There have been many festivals and celebrations going on this year, and unfortunately I'm a little late to the party as this is October 2022 as I'm doing this video. But there was one festival where Head East, the local band that made national big time, they performed at one of the festivals here. And also, there have been many historical markers that were placed in Prairie du Rocher. I'm going to go ahead and show you them, and they all do in timeline mode from the beginnings in 1722 all the way to the present day in 2022. And not only do they talk about local history as well as the surrounding area, but they also talk about national and world events that happen. So come with me, I will take you on a little journey, walk, and relive some history. Here we go. All right, we're going to start with the first marker. 1722, village of Prairie du Rocher is formed. In 1722, as part of the old French colony that developed in the Mississippi Valley, a tract of land donated by the Royal Indies Company was settled at Prairie du Rocher. The motivation for this settlement was agriculture, mining, and a home for settlers, many being new arrivals from France. The population of the area was 126, not counting 77 slaves, 59 black and 17 Indian. And then 1720, 2 years before, Fort de Chartres was built to protect and develop France's holdings here, which held great promise for economic opportunity. And then talks more about other history that happened elsewhere. And it says here, New Orleans is only 4 years older than Prairie du Rocher. Wow. And by the way, Fort de Chartres or Chartres is just that way if you keep going that road. 1743, common grounds established in Prairie du Rocher. The common field system was a practice that French settlers brought with them that still has a lasting effect today. It was an agricultural system that consisted of farmland and pasture for animals that was communally owned by the village. Inhabitants had to mutually agree upon restrictions such as when to let animals graze and when to take in the crops. The size of the portion of common fields assigned to each villager was dependent on the size of his family. The common grounds exist to this day. All right, 1763, Treaty of Paris affects Prairie du Rocher. The end of the 7 Years' War, better known to the colonists as the French and Indian War, came not by skirmish, but by the Treaty of Paris signed February 1763. Through this, of all of France's possessions east of the Mississippi were ceded to Britain, with the exception of New Orleans. France's rule on the Mississippi had ended and the inhabitants of Prairie du Rocher were faced with an uncertain future. The French and Indians were allies and for the most part friendly. All right, so the fourth Fort de Chartres, made primarily of stone, was substantially completed. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart was born, and then Pierre Leclerc and Auguste Chateau leave Prairie du Rocher to establish a trading post which becomes St. Louis. And that's about probably 40 miles from here. And now 1765, living under British rule. The British are coming had a much different meaning to the villagers of Prairie du Rocher. The British took control of Fort de Chartres, renaming it Fort Cavendish on October 10, 1765. The majority of the residents of the villages of Chartres, St. Philip, and Kaskaskia left for the West Bank. Very few villagers left Prairie du Rocher, and those staying were asked to take an oath. They were given until March 1766 to decide. The fort would continue under British rule for 7 years. The British had been the enemy and the villagers' trade competitor for years. Also, England was anti-Catholic. Although a provision in the Treaty of Paris allowed the French to keep their religion, there must have been some great apprehension in the population. 1778, a third flag to fly over Prairie du Rocher. George Rogers Clark, under secret orders from Patrick Henry, the governor of Virginia, was sent to take the Illinois villages. This would give more protection to the eastern colonies from British attack. For the record, the Prairie du Rocher inhabitants were not so much supporters of the Americans as opposed to the British. The terms of liberty and justice made it easy for the occupants of Prairie du Rocher to come to terms with the Americans. And then over here, of course, we had the events that happened during that time period. The Boston Tea Party, American Revolution, the Declaration of Independence. The one I did a video on, George Rogers Clark captures Fort Kaskaskia for America. And then residents of Prairie du Rocher elect 2 magistrates, the first official government. And also, George Rogers Clark attended a ball held in his honor in Prairie du Rocher. How about that? (1818) was the year Illinois became a state, as it says here. Changes in government, local and state. The formation of Randolph County in 1795 preceded Illinois' statehood by 23 years. By act of the state legislature in 1821, the settlement of Prairie du Rocher became an official village within the state of Illinois. Trustees were appointed for the village. Such a small village did not need 2 layers of government, and the common field organization was closer to what the inhabitants had been accustomed to and met their legal needs. The village organization was renewed in 1837 when the previous one had lapsed. And then it says here, Prairie du Rocher predates the state of Illinois by 96 years and the United States of America by 54. Nice. Then we're going to jump ahead to 1864, the U.S. Civil War skirmish in Prairie du Rocher. A minor skirmish in the U.S. Civil War actually occurred when a group of bushwhackers and desperados came to Prairie du Rocher. 2 guerrillas were killed by Union soldiers and the others were captured. The subsequent actions of the soldiers in the village were to rob Blossom's store of goods and steal horses from 3 inhabitants. The Union captain denied any wrongdoing, claiming that people in town were Confederate sympathizers. As we all know, the U.S. Civil War ended in 1865. And here's just a reminder that during the Civil War, travel from Missouri to Illinois required permission. How many wars have been fought on American soil since you have been born? That's a big question. And it also says, I know the sun's really bright, but it also says on the bottom here that by 1864, villagers had lived through the Fox War, the French and Indian War, the American Revolution, the War of 1812, and the Civil War, along with Indian attacks and skirmishes, each with its own repercussions. 1867, Abraham Lee from Prairie du Rocher wins lottery. What? In Chicago, Mr. Uranus H. Crosby built an elaborate opera house and ran out of money. He raffled off the property, and Abraham Lee at Prairie du Rocher was the winner. It took weeks for Mr. Lee to hear of his winnings and then another month to claim it. Having no need for an opera house, Lee sold his ticket back for $200,000, a very substantial amount in that day. Well, still is. But Lee then built a 3-story mansion on the property where this plaque stands. Wow. I wonder how long these trees have been here. And no, that is definitely not the mansion. So over here, here's some side history. 1871, the Chicago Fire. 1878, a Negro school opens in Prairie du Rocher. And then the Lee Mansion. It had a mansard roof, ornate bracketed eaves, stained glass windows, and an enclosed front sun porch facing Market Street on this lot. The foundation remains are directly in front of you, and the remaining building is the summer kitchen wash house. Okay, that's a good thing to point out. That is the wash house. And also down here it says Abraham Lee made a good decision as the opera house burned in the Chicago Fire. Oh man. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead to 1902. Railroad granted easement. In 1902, Iron Mountain Railroad laid a single track through Prairie du Rocher, which provided passenger service to St. Louis daily. Far from backwards. Oh, what do you know? There's a train in the background. Prairie du Rocher was as modern and up-to-date as other larger communities, and the passenger train would connect the village to outside goods and travel, and open an avenue for visitors to come and appreciate the rich French, and by now, diverse culture of the village. Alright, so 1902, Harley Davidson was founded a year later. Okay. World's Fair held in St. Louis. 1904, NAACP was formed. First automobile is driven in Prairie du Rocher. Okay, wow. It's cool how they document all this stuff. Also, 1914, first water plant built for Prairie du Rocher. And 2 years after that, 1916, the first electrical plant in operation in village. I am going to go ahead and jump around to 1951. The archaeological dig unearths archaic artifacts. The Modoc rock shelter site, which is about maybe 3 or 4 miles from here, was discovered in 1951 by archaeologist Irvin Pythman. As a result of road grading, Pythman observed artifacts on the surface under or near the bluff at the side of Bluff Road. This spurred major excavations in the 1950s and 1980s, mostly led by the Illinois State Museum. Artifacts revealed that 9,000 years ago, this rock shelter was used as a short-term camp. By 6,000 years ago, it was used as a long-term camp, and then again for a hunting camp 4,000 years ago. And then some more modern history is on here, like Pearl Harbor, World War II, the polio vaccine, JFK assassination, MLK assassination, Neil Armstrong walks on the moon. And then we're going to talk about that mansion again. The Lee Brickey Mansion destroyed. Abraham Lee, after winning the Opera House lottery, built a mansion on these grounds, just like the one a few markers back said. He died 2 years after the completion of this magnificent home. Lee's business partner, F.W. Brickey, bought the home, and since the time, it has been known as the Brickey House. On April 5th, 1970, the fire was discovered at 2:45 a.m. when already out of control. The Prairie du Rocher Fire Department, along with neighboring departments, saw the last of the frame structure fall at about 3:45 a.m. And here's some more historical stuff. St. Joseph's celebrates 250th anniversary. The mobile phone invented. The bicentennial, the village hall / post office / fire station is built. And then John Lennon is shot. Okay. MTV is launched. Local historian Percy Clerk dies in house fire. 1987, Prairie du Rocher Hawks baseball team wins state championship. Wow. Pretty cool. And then it talks more about the mansion as it sat vacant for years according to Brickey's wishes. Many admired it from afar, yet never saw its true extravagance. As fate would have it, the Chicago Opera House, the subject of the lottery winnings which were used to build this opulent mansion by Abraham Lee, would burn in the Chicago fire in 1871. This mansion suffered the same consequence almost 100 years later. Wow. I guess coincidence is just that. And now 1993, most of us who were around during that time, like myself, we remember the Great Flood of 1993 as parts of Randolph and Monroe County and other areas along the Mississippi River were underwater, tragically. But it says here, Prairie du Rocher was spared. The year was one of devastating floods all over the Midwest. Prairie du Rocher's fight to save their precious town came to a precipice when a local construction company blew out a section of the river levee, thus saving the town. The homes located outside the creek levee were lost. Help in prevention and cleanup was received by local and national communities along with the residents' tireless efforts. The 1993 flood was labeled a 500-year flood. All right, so there's some more history. Like Valmeyer, Illinois, I remember it was destroyed in the flood and they literally moved the town to a higher place. The internet comes to Prairie du Rocher. Wow, 1996. The year after that, first Harry Potter book is published. Google begins. Attack on World Trade Center. Facebook is launched. And then 2005, the Prairie du Rocher Library opens. And in 2008, the Prairie du Rocher Chamber of Commerce is formed. And now we are going to approach the final marker, which is present day, 2022. 300 years of tradition. A strong suit of the village continues to be the respect and the reverence to their traditions, both young and old. From the King's Ball, better known as the 12th Night Ball, held every year on the first Saturday of January, to the party in the park held on Wednesday evenings during the summer. Many love to gather and visit with each other to reminisce of times gone by. Many obstacles this community faces continue to be overcome with tenacity, kindness, and acceptance. All right. So, as the world sees ever-changing climates, cultures, and challenges facing all that walk this earth, We hope that this timeline serves as a reminder to one and all, be you local or from afar, that the human spirit is alive and well. Whether your focus is on the past, present, or future, acceptance and love will help all prevail. We all find it much more enjoyable with these attributes sprinkled in. And this was gifted to the village on July 10th, 2022. And while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and look at some of the recent history, the last 12 years. Apple releases the iPad, the Levy Fest held to raise funds for Levy study, solar eclipse in 2017. 2019, the levee holds for 6 months as flood waters threaten. The St. Louis Blues win the Stanley Cup. 2020, Fort de Chartres celebrates 300-year anniversary. 2021, or last year, St. Joseph's Parish celebrates tri-centennial. And then finally in 2022, Prairie du Rocher celebrates its 300-year anniversary with many events throughout the year. And then we also have the ongoing Russia invades Ukraine. The first African-American woman Supreme Court Justice sworn in. All right, thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Historically Marked. I am Jason in Prairie du Rocher, Illinois. Happy 300th birthday to this nice little village. A village about 650 people. And I'm standing in front of the old driveway of the Lee Bricky Mansion. So check it out. All right. Thanks again for watching. Sign off.